Okay, so Annie, I know I had the story wrong when I put it out on social media because I'm old. My timeline is a little askew. But how did you go about trying to get in the Olympics? Like, what was the seed?
The seed was watching the Olympics in the last cycle, watching the Tokyo Games, and the lead up to Tokyo. I was like, maybe I could skate, one of these qualifying events, blah, blah. And I looked at it. I actually went to some of like the Vans Park Series contests, but it was just such a mess. Like you couldn't tell what was a qualifying event and what was a Vans Park Series event. I wasn't skating a lot of bowls at that point anyways. And then pandemic hit, and it was like, now it's really messed up because they were using, as far as I could tell, points from invitational Vans Park Series to go toward qualifying for the Olympics, which isn't right because you have to be invited to those.
The Vans Park Series in its initial inception was supposed to be qualifying for the Olympics. And then from what I understand, Nike was not down with that because it was their Vans events.
Right.
And so then they had to go to something that was less branded. I don't know, Vans. So Vans just went all in on, okay, well then our events are chaos.
Right.
And here's a best trick jam for cash. You know what I mean? So, but more,
and it was the opposite of what World Skate wanted as far as a qualifying series. And so they had to throw together their own qualifying series, which were underpublicized. And unless
people were skating at 2 a.m. Things like that.
Yep.
Why 2 a.m.?
Because it was just a free for all, and people were all flying in from all over. They just had so many people; they had no schedule, and so.
Wait, you took your ride when you got there?
No, it was just more like they were trying to allocate heats. There's so many people.
There was that many people
like 9 heats
trying to qualify.
Yes.
Yeah, and they're pushing towards a weekend finals, and the only way that they're going to be able to do it is just to run the heats through the middle of the night.
So am I mistaken in saying that 80% of the people shouldn't have been in it? Or was there 500 people that was neck and neck?
No. There wasn't 500 people, but I don't know. I wasn't there. It was kind of a shit show as far as
were there people where you saw it and you were like, dude, seriously, why are you doing it?
So all I can do is speak from my experience the next cycle. And I'll tell you about that. But leading up to that.
But hold on, when you were considering this for the Vans Park Series, did you know that your way to get into, I don't even know, the qualifying or whatever was through your British citizenship?
No, I hadn't even considered.
You hadn't considered that?
No, in the Tokyo cycle, it hadn't even occurred to me that I'm British and that I could go that route.
You're not British, but anyway.
And it wasn't until.
But you must have known you have this heritage.
I knew my dad was born in Britain.
Right.
But at first you were going to do it
but
as
I didn't
an
know
American.
the laws of the land.
Understood.
And I now know that if you have a mother or father that was born in Britain before 1984, you're British.
Wow.
Whether you've ever been there before or not,
yeah.
you're British and you can go get your British passport. And that's what applied to me once I looked into it.
Right.
But at that point, I hadn't looked into it.
Mm-hmm.
I was only looking at like maybe I could qualify for the American team. And they were doing like video because of the pandemic and stuff. They were doing like video submissions, and then they had a qualifier to make the U.S. team at the TF, which I at that point had skated like twice and hit my head twice, and it's just like wasn't even like the other part of it. And I think a big part of it was that at that point in park skating, if you were a park skater, you didn't wear pads.
Right.
Pads were like
right.
You weren't,
and they were campaigning. They were actively campaigning to not have pads.
Oh yeah,
in the Olympic events.
They were trying to make it a rule around that time.
They're trying to make it a rule.
Why?
They were the Vans Park Series stuff.
It's not a fashion contest. It's a contest.
No, but they were trying to make it like they were trying to own it and try and make it super cool. So the people that were running the Vans Park Series, and remember that the Converse.
The jam at the U.S. Open.
Yeah. What was that? Coastal Chaos or whatever it was.
Coastal Carnage.
Coastal Carnage. They were not only saying you can't wear pads or a helmet, they were putting rules like you can't do 540s. you can't do flip grabs. Like they were like saying what tricks you can and can't do. And then I remember Ben Rayborn.
You can't not be from Burnside.
Basically, like we want to control how cool this is, how core this is.
Yeah.
And then I remember one of the cool core guys, Ben Rayborn, did a McTwist right in front of the judges and was like, "Fuck you! Like you can't tell skateboarders what we can wear and what we can do. Like it's just like you're blowing it. And trying to be so cool, you're blowing what this is all about."
Yeah, the other way around where you go, you have to wear pads because we're worried about your safety. That's a good argument. But when you're doing the opposite, it's like we want you to get more hurt.
Yeah,
it's just
my argument, and I talked to someone that was up in the chain and was fighting for that for whatever reason, and I go, dude, it's not a matter of if something's going to happen in one of these events. It's a matter of when something's going to happen.
Yeah.
And these guys are doing 8-foot 540s in concrete. Like you're insane if you think that nothing's going to happen.
Yeah, and sure enough, it did happen in 3 events back to back to back. Guys hit their head and were carried out on stretchers, bleeding from their head.
Wow.
And then finally, after that happened, like serious like brain injuries, they were like, maybe we should wear helmets.
Man, what's crazy?
And then World Skate got their act together and said, if you're under 18, you have to wear a helmet for safety reasons. And
but if you're 19,
but
kill
if you're
yourself.
19, you can go ahead and have a crazy head injury.
I remember being cool when I was younger. I was like, I ain't wearing pads in this particular thing or that particular thing. And I remember him wearing a helmet, and I was like, yeah, like you're a big influence to kids. I think it's really cool that you're wearing a helmet because kids that want to be like us, like for instance, a giant park contest that is in the Olympics and a bunch of kids watch it on TV and go, ooh, I want to be a park skateboarder, and they don't wear a helmet. Like, no, dude, like you should wear a helmet. Like my kid wants to be in park. I want him to wear a helmet. It's like, well, it's not that cool. And I'm like, yeah, well, what about when you're 40 and you're like, I'm Larry Holmes? Like, you put a helmet on, dude.
Yeah, or just a TBI. I mean, it's going to... I just knew that it was a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
And at some point, if nothing had happened up until the actual Olympic Games, everyone's going for it.
Yeah.
And someone's going to get rocked.
Yep.
Yeah, someone's going to hit their head.
And luckily, and I mean, that's why you bowed out from USA Skateboarding. Essentially.
For a variety of reasons, but that was one of them.
Like,
because
they were actively advocating, like, no, that
these decisions being made where it's somehow I was to answer for them because I was the only name that people knew that was connected to this organization. So they're like, hey, what about this rule? Why aren't they doing? I go, I didn't decide that. I'm fighting against it. I can't speak on their behalf.